Hi, my name is Taylor Johnson. I'm the Transit and Parking Program Manager for the City of Norman, and I'm here to talk to you about the public meeting presentation for the proposed City of Norman transit service changes and go through that information and how you can submit public comments and how you can contact us. So the agenda for this presentation, we'll go through a little bit of the background leading up to these proposed service changes, the official public notice language, how to submit official comments. We'll do a summary of the service changes, overview of the entire system, show you some current proposed system maps, again, that high level look, and then we'll go into more detail and show the service changes by region and discuss those in more detail. And the regions are Central Norman, West Norman, Northwest Norman, North and Northeast Norman, and then East Norman, just to break it up some and allow us to dive in a little bit more. So for the background, the University of Oklahoma transferred the operations of the city public transit service on July 1st, 2019. They retained service for campus, and it's named CART, so they still run a shuttle service in and around the OU Norman campus. But again, on July 1st, the city took over the city public transit side, the federally funded side. In July of 2020, the city hired a consultant, Nelson Nygaard, to assist with updating the long-range transit strategic plan. We had a long-range plan embedded into the city's comprehensive transportation plan that was approved in 2014. However, a lot of the assumptions had to be updated due to the changeover of the operations of the city operating it and a shift in some of the locations of things such as the transit center, and we'll get into that in just a minute. And then on June 22nd, 2021, the Go Norman Transit Plan was unanimously adopted by City Council, and this followed an 11-month process of collecting data and receiving feedback from stakeholders, city staff, City Council, and the public. Again, Nelson Nygaard helped us those 12 months to go out to the public, ask comments, have meetings, analyze data, past data, and then project into the future. And speaking of projecting the future, the Go Norman Transit Plan identified many recommendations for transit improvements in Norman. These recommendations included additional frequency, Sunday service, expanded service coverage, and expanded hours on weekdays and Saturdays, just to name some. To help city staff and the city in general think through these recommendations and how to tackle them over time, they were put into phases, and they really help guide the city in making improvements as funding becomes available. And really the recommendations and phases were put together based on the feedback from the public, as well as what made sense in terms of cost and what was needed. The first phase of improvements was to revamp the current route network and to better serve existing areas within or near the existing budget. So again, we want to do better. We want to expand service and add days and hours, but we really wanted to see what can we do better with the budget we have and the vehicles we have and the staff we have, and try to get close to that number, but revamp it as best as we could. And then recently, on September 27th, 2022, City Council unanimously approved and acknowledged the public participation process for service changes as identified in the Go Norman Transit Plan in this presentation. So we went to Council and asked for them to approve us going back out to the public and asking for final feedback before we go back to Council and seek to implement these changes, their approval for implementing these changes. The public notice. The City of Norman hereby provides notice of 3 public meetings in order to receive comments on proposed summer 2023 transit service modifications planned for implementation in August 2023. Based on input gathered at these public meetings, we anticipate that the City of Norman Council will act on these changes on December 13th, 2022. And that's one of their council meetings, that Tuesday in December, the 13th. These service changes will affect the entire Norman transit service. Normally when you have transit changes, you maybe affect areas here and there, but again, with this long-range planning process, we really identified a need to address a lot of areas around town that Norman transit service could get better. So it really does affect most of the system. In our public meeting schedule, November 15th, 2022, from noon to 1 p.m., we're going to have a virtual meeting, and you can join that virtual meeting by going to tinyurl.com/Norman Transit Meeting. You can call in at 888-475-4499, and the meeting ID is 873-4614-7180, and you might need that to join the meeting if you're calling in. On November 16th, 2022, we're going to have our second meeting, and that will be from 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. at the Norman Central Public Library, the Oklahoma Redbud Room. That's the large room on the third floor. And that's located at 102 West Acres Street, Norman, Oklahoma, 73069. Again, 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. on November 16th. And then finally, on November 17th, 2022, from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m., we're going to have our final public meeting in the City of Norman City Hall Council Chambers, and that is at 201 West Gray Street, Norman, OK, 73069. In case you need more details or don't necessarily want to go back through this presentation, all of this information is available at our service change website, which is tinyurl.com/Norman Transit Changes. Again, tinyurl.com/Norman Transit Changes. Moving on to how to submit official comments, the City of Norman does encourage public comments at the public meetings I just mentioned, or in writing on or before November 21st, 2022. Again, it is anticipated that Council will act on the proposed changes on December 13th, 2022. So that deadline of November 21st is really for staff to be able to compile, analyze, and package the feedback that we received to put on Council's agenda for December 13th for consideration. All comments should include name, address, email, and phone number. That lets us log the comments properly, follow up if necessary, and just keep track of all of them that we receive, but we understand if some aren't submitted with that information. And comments may be submitted online at the website I just mentioned a while ago, tinyurl.com/Norman Transit Changes. You can email transit@normanok.gov, or you can call 405-307-7219. And finally, you can mail your comment to City of Norman Transit, attention 2023 Summer Service Changes, P.O. Box 370, Norman, OK 73070. So again, just an overview of how you can submit comments. You can go to the public meetings that I mentioned earlier, and again, you can see that information on the website. Or you can submit it online at the website, email transit@normanok.gov, call 405-307-7219, or you can mail the city at City of Norman Transit, attention 2023 Summer Service Changes, P.O. Box 370, Norman, OK 73070. Okay, going into the summary of the service changes. Again, this is kind of a high-level view, and then we'll zoom in on the service changes by region here in a moment. All routes are proposed to be operated out of a new city transit center located at 320 East Comanche Street. Earlier this year, the city opted to purchase property near downtown Norman to be remodeled into a new transit center. In the next slide, I'll get into more details about that location. All routes will be reconfigured to improve service operations and passenger usability. And this really, by and large, includes having routes mostly operate bidirectionally. And if you're familiar with our system, a lot of the routes operate on loops. So they go out from the current transfer center, and at some point they begin a large loop to improve coverage in our city and allow people to access more areas. However, over the years, what people have found out is they may go to a certain destination, but then when they get back on the bus, they have to ride the bus all the way or back around just to get back to where they came from. And it really increases the time that you're spent riding a transit vehicle rather than doing the business that you set out to do or having time for other things. So under this, and we'll get into it in more detail with the service changes by region, But let's say you went out from downtown Norman and you went out to Walmart. You could get off the bus, go do your business, and then most likely there will be a bus stop across the street that you could cross the street, wait at, and catch the bus going back in the direction of downtown, allowing you to not ride the complete route if you don't need to or don't wish to. Some route segments will be eliminated or realigned, resulting in both discontinued and new bus stops along the way. And again, we'll get into those details here in a moment by the regional presentation slides. And finally, I'm about to go into details about the new transit center and those maps by region. So for the new city transit center, again, I mentioned a while ago, the city opted to purchase property at 320 East Comanche Street in April 2022 to remodel into a city transit center. We're currently utilizing OU Cart's Brook Street Transfer Station, which is located just east of the football stadium, the OU football stadium on Brook Street. And this remodel will include many improvements. This at 320 East Comanche Street was an old drive-through bank, and we feel that we can adequately remodel it into a bus transit center that could service for a number of years, at least until we get a better idea of maybe expanding service in the future. So for exterior improvements, we identified bus bays, of course, ADA compliant, site circulation, benches, trash cans, and shelters. And then for interior, public and staff restrooms, waiting area for vending machines and water fountain, and a staff break room. And we hope that this will be an improvement over the current transfer station at the OU Brook Street Transfer Station at the OU Duck Pond, as we'll have those indoor amenities for restrooms and staff break rooms and water fountains and different things. So that's the first major change in and around the downtown area, is for all the routes to be operated out of this new city transit center, which staff are actively working on the remodel plans. Here are the current and proposed system maps. On the left side of the screen, you'll see the current routes. Again, going back to that looped versus bidirectional conversation, you can see some of the large loops that we currently operate for most of our routes, where you would probably have to ride the entire length of the route to get to or from your destination. And then on the right side of the screen, the proposed routes, you can see a lot of them are streamlined into bidirectional routes, meaning the same way they go out from the transit center, they come back in. They stay in large part on main arterial roads. This is another switch from the current system, is getting off those somewhat neighborhood or not as heavily used streets and allowing the bus operators to more cleanly navigate the bus and navigate turns that are more appropriate for these large-sized vehicles. So I'll stay here for just a moment to allow you to look at this. And these maps, again, are at the website, tinyurl.com/Norman Transit Changes. So moving into the regional route changes discussion, we'll start with Central Norman. First of all the routes will be operated out of the new transit center, what we discussed previously at 320 East Comanche. And this requires various changes around the Porter Avenue and Comanche Street area just to get in and out of the new transit center. Some new and additional service we've identified is Gray Street between Crawford Avenue and Flood Avenue, and that's on Route 110. University Boulevard between Main Street and Boyd Street, and that's on Route 112. Elm Avenue between Boyd Street and Lindsay Street, again on Route 112. James Garner Avenue between Acre Street and Gray Street on Route 121. And Eufaula Street between Crawford Avenue and University Boulevard on Routes 111 and 112. The discontinued service generally for this area is James Garner and / Jenkins Avenue, where it turns into Jenkins, between Eufaula Street and Duffy Street on the Route 121. And then Berry Road between Acre Street and Main Street on Route 110. And just want to point out that we are still looking to serve OU very frequently on these proposed system changes, and even moving the transit center from near OU. The Route 111 would navigate around the east side of campus and then go out to East Norman. And then the Route 112 would navigate around the west side of campus and go out on West Lindsay out to West Norman. So getting people to and from OU is still a major part of these transit service changes and our passengers' desires. And then I'll also mention that the discontinued service along James Garner and Jenkins Avenue, we are putting service on Webster, or keeping service on Webster, so people will still be able to access the route, as well as on Eufaula Street. So walking distance shouldn't be a problem for those currently utilizing that service. And moving to the routes on the west side of the screen, you can see, again, the improved service along 36th Avenue. We'll move on to the northwest side of Norman, but we're really trying to improve service to areas on the west and northwest side. For many years, the Route 120 has not provided adequate service to these areas just because it does require an additional transfer. It doesn't go to the current transit center, so folks have an additional time loss here trying to get to those destinations. And so this bottom half of 120, this route is being modified to being taken over by 110 and 112 in large part wholly. Moving on to changes in Northwest Norman. So new and additional service along Tecumseh Road between 36th Avenue and 24th Avenue Northwest, Route 110. We currently have service there, but again, this would be bidirectional along the Route 110 route. 24th Avenue Northwest Southwest between Tecumseh Road and Lindsay Street, and that's Route 110 and 112. And this goes back to West Norman a little bit, but we really are improving frequency and adding service along 24th all the way to Lindsay, a major corridor in Norman with lots of destinations for folks. And then discontinued service, Mount Williams Drive at the Crest bus stop on Route 110. Right now, the Route 110 does a turnaround there at Crest to Mount Williams Drive to get back on route along Robinson Street. Since the route would just be operating on 24th Avenue Northwest up to the Healthplex and then back south, there's no longer need for this turnaround, but people could still get to the Crest grocery store and other destinations with bus stops there in that area. Another discontinued service proposal, Robinson Street between 24th Avenue Northwest and Berry Road, again on Route 110. And then 36th Avenue Northwest between Robinson Street and Healthplex Parkway, Route 120. And this service, again, is on the Route 120 that doesn't perform very well. And we, again, would be allocating the majority of that route to the new proposed routes 110 and 112. And this discontinued service between Robinson and Healthplex Parkway was identified as a not very productive corridor, and we just weren't able to fit it into the new proposed routes in their timetables. These proposed routes 110 and 112 would operate on 60-minute frequency again. Moving along to changes in northeast Norman. So we're looking at new and additional service along Rock Creek Road between Porter Avenue and 12th Avenue Northeast, and this is along a new proposed Route 122. 12th Avenue Northeast between Rock Creek Road and Main Street, again, Route 122, adding service to Northeast Norman. And then Porter Avenue between Robinson Street and Comanche Avenue on Route 121. And the discontinued service along Finley Avenue between Main Street and Robinson Street along Route 121, and then Peters Avenue between Robinson Street and Sim Street, again on Route 121, is really tied to that last new and additional service point for where we're adding Porter Avenue between Robinson Street and Comanche Street. This is really consolidating those two segments of route into one route segment along Porter, again getting service off of those more neighborhood streets and more onto the arterials. And these proposed routes, 121 and 122, would operate on a 60-minute frequency what I call a figure eight. So the 121, say, would operate, the bus would go out on the top of the hour. So for the first 30 minutes of the hour, it would go out and run the 121 route. And then for the second half of the hour, it would operate the 122 route. And again, this is what was proposed given the current transit service budget and how we could still, serve many of the existing areas that we serve, as well as, increasing access to some destinations. I would like to point out that the Route 121 on the proposed routes is still a loop, one-way loop, and that is, again, because of the budget and the destinations that we heard were still in need of being served. We just weren't able to identify a better way to service these areas. So currently it would be a one-way loop at the top of the hour. Moving along to East Norman, and this is really about the Route 111, the highest productivity route in the system. New and additional service would be added along 12th Avenue Northeast between Paloma Place and Main Street. So we're looking at extending Route 111 up near the Main Street and 12th Avenue Northeast intersection. And then Beaumont Drive to Brandywine Lane between Vicksburg Avenue and Lindsay Street on Route 111. So we'd be extending the Route 111 a little bit to the east to continue to serve apartment complexes on the south side of Lindsay Street, just east of Biloxi, as well as hitting some multifamily housing there along Brandywine. Some discontinued service in this area is Brook Street between Classen Boulevard and 12th Avenue Southeast, Route 111. This is one of those trade-offs for bi-directional service. Currently, the large loop for Route 111 serves Brook Street and Lindsay Street on the loop, one outbound and one inbound. And this proposed route would consolidate the service along Lindsay Street. Beaumont Drive, another discontinued service would be Beaumont Drive to Biloxi Drive between Vicksburg Avenue and Lindsay Street along Route 111. Again, this is that service of extending the route slightly to the east to operate on Brandywine rather than Biloxi. Creekside Drive between Lindsay Street and Wind Chime Drive. On the current routes, you may be familiar with this small turnaround that we do. We go by apartment complex and then down into a neighborhood and do a turnaround. And this would be that discontinued service there. Again, the route would be operated on Lindsay Street. Folks in that apartment complex in that neighborhood would still be able to access the bus. We just wouldn't be doing the turnaround in a neighborhood street and area. Finally, a couple more discontinued service along Boyd Street between Jenkins Avenue and 12th Avenue Southeast. And that's Route 121. And then Triad Village Drive between Alameda Street and 12th Avenue Southeast. That's Route 121 again. This proposed Route 111, the main part of the East Norman changes, would operate on 30-minute frequency. So a bus would come by a bus stop every 30 minutes. That's the way to think about it. But it would operate on a 60-minute headway. So the routes, it would take you, if you rode the bus all the way out from, say, downtown to the east side Walmart, it'd take you about an hour to get there. Or it would take you about 30 minutes to get there and 30 minutes to get back. So that's all the regional sections to go over. I kind of wanted to go over the current proposed system maps again and in there, but I added in the quarter of a mile walk shed just for folks to be able to glance at. A quarter of a mile is what is kind of a benchmark for what people are willing to walk to and from a bus stop. It's generally about 5 to 10 minutes. It's not perfect. The bubbles are they're just bubbles, but they don't necessarily reflect the sidewalk infrastructure or any barriers. So just wanted to show this, that many areas of town proposed in the route changes are still, again, being serviced very well. There are some areas that are having discontinued service like we discussed, But if you just take a gander at each of these current routes and proposed routes, you'll see that a large part of Norman is still served in the same way or the same coverage, but with better frequency and a better route network for people to use and for the city to operate. And then finally, here's the current proposed system maps cleaned up, just to give one final glance at those for people to look at. Again, these are on our website. And then I'll just end on this question slide. At the public meetings, of course, we'll take questions, and that's why this slide's here. You can submit your questions and comments again to all those different avenues via the website, by calling in, by emailing, or by mailing in physical mail. And all that information was at the beginning of the presentation or at the website tinyurl.com/Norman Transit Changes. And the Transit and Parking Division within the Department of Public Works, our general page is shown there on a screen. It's normanok.gov/residents-visitors/transit-parking if you'd like to take a look at any other transit information besides the service changes. And with that, I'll end this presentation. Again, please reach out with any comments or questions that you may have. Thank you.